Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Andrew Senior, and I'll be delivering the direct examination of Skylar Weirs and the cross-examination of Casey Rogers. May the defense's witnesses introduce themselves.
Yes, they may.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Jackson Pagano, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Jasmine Perez, and I will be portraying Skylar Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I'm Tanner Bertram, and I will be playing the role of Dr. Devin Williams.
And with that, I think we can start with the swearing in. Team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will allow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Do we have any gallery members here? I don't think that I have to swear them in then.
Nope, they're just live streamed. So
All right. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
All right, with that, does either side have any preliminary matters to bring to my attention before we proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, we have a few.
All right, plaintiffs, go ahead.
We request permission for our attorneys to either sit or stand while performing direct and cross examinations according to the space that they're in.
Granted.
Thank you. We also request that we assume that both counsels already have copies of all the exhibits, and therefore the timekeeper doesn't need to screen share to explain them.
I would actually prefer that exhibits be screen shared because that makes it easier for the judges. So I will go ahead and presume that both sides already have copies. You don't need to present it to them before you put it up to us. You don't have to, act like you're handing it to them at the counsel table, but you do need to screen share them once you want the judges or the jury to see them.
Thank you. And lastly, we request that both counsels, unless that they are the timekeeper, an attorney examining a witness, or a witness getting examined, that we can keep our cameras off for the sake of the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, please do so.
Thank you. That is all.
Defense counsel, do you have any preliminary matters?
No, Your Honor, we have no preliminary matters at this time.
All right. With that, let's jump right in. If plaintiff's counsel wants to begin with opening statements.
All right, just want to make sure that my timekeeper is ready. All right, perfect. Your Honor and members of the jury, my name is Shannon Sachs, and I represent Dakota Weirs. We are here because of Dakota Weirs, a young girl who innocently took a job that would ultimately give her cancer. Dakota Weirs was a highly active member of the community. She always was the first to join her school clubs and loved helping the homeless shelters in her area. And Dakota dedicated her life to her music. When she was only 14 years old, Dakota began working for Haven Landscaping, where she used a fertilizer product from the company called Lush Fertilizers. She worked with Lush's products for a long time, but unfortunately, after 4 years of employment, she started to notice a steady decline in her health. Her symptoms worsened until she could no longer do many of the physical tasks that she loved without being in pain. So during the time that Dakota was supposed to be having fun with her friends and hearing back from colleges, she instead received a very different kind of news. She was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, an environmental cancer. And just like that, her life was flipped on its head. Dakota suffered immensely. Her job, her hopes for college were all but destroyed. She lost everything. And she went through so much pain, both mentally and physically, at only 18 years old. However, in the following months, following her diagnosis, some new information came to light. Leaked documents showed that Jufa, a harmful chemical, was found in Lush fertilizer products. Jufo is known to cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and Lush Fertilizer knew of this fact and hid it from the public. Lush Fertilizer created a product that causes cancer, and they hid it and they buried it. Members of the jury, today you will hear the defense give their side of the story. They will try to tell you that Jufo is not as harmful as it may seem. However, this argument fails when you consider the research done by professionals. Real and undeniable science, as you will hear about today, has proven that Jufo is a dangerous and cancer-causing chemical. The defense will also try and claim that they wanted their users to be safe and that they took all the precautions to make that happen. However, the evidence will show that they incorporated Jufo in their products despite knowing about its dangers. And on top of that, the evidence will show that Lush Fertilizer actually decided not to take the measures necessary to reduce the harmful effects of Jufo because of how costly it could be. To them, the risk of cancer seems to be worth saving a few bucks. And above all, Your Honor and members of the jury, the defense may try to tell you that they care for Dakota and that they are sorry for her condition. However, sorry doesn't cure Dakota's cancer. Sorry doesn't discount many experts' research on the effects of the cancer-causing agent Jufo, and sorry doesn't undo the fact that Lush Fertilizers knowingly included Jufo in their products. We ask that you pay attention to three particular witnesses today: Dakota Weirs, Carson Durst, and Dr. Casey Rogers. Dakota will shed light on her experience throughout her time working with Lush Fertilizer products, as well as what happened as she found out about her illness. Carson Durst, the lead product developer for Tara's research and development team, will give us an inside view of what her time was like working with Lush Fertilizer. This testimony will prove that Lush Fertilizer do not have the care and consideration for their user safety as they promise. Dr. Casey Rogers will then provide an expert's description of the properties of Jufo, which will show the dangers of the chemical and solidify our understanding of the severity that this case carries. Now, on one side of this case, we see a large company, one that is too proud to admit that they were careless and negligent with their safety products. The company that chose profit over the well-being of their users. And on the other side, there is a girl who lost everything at their hands. And all she wants is to see that this company, Lush Fertilizer, is brought to justice. Your honors and members of the jury, in an attempt to bring Dakota some solace, you will see by preponderance of the evidence that Lush Fertilizer has been negligent with their safety precautions and will rule in favor of the plaintiff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sachs.
Your Honor, before we proceed to the defense's opening statement, we have a team member who's experiencing some technical difficulties and might need to briefly leave the Zoom and rejoin. Could we pause for just a moment so that our teammate may do that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Are we all set?
Team Creed, have we solved any technical difficulties?
Yes, sorry, she just rejoined. Thank you for your patience.
Perfect.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Ms. Clark, are you doing the opening?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, today you will hear that Dakota Weirs played a game of Russian roulette. As you just heard from Ms. Sachs, Dakota Weirs developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma after using many chemicals over a long period of time, just one of which was Lush fertilizer. However, the plaintiff has not told you the full story. The plaintiff has not told you that you will hear from Dakota Weirs that while working as a landscaper, she used many different fertilizers, not just Lush fertilizer. You will learn that unlike Drufo, the chemical bonding agent in Lush fertilizer, many of those other fertilizers contain added pesticides which have been proven to cause cancer in humans. You will see that there were clear warning labels on each package of fertilizer, including Lush fertilizer, and you will see that warning label. And you will hear that, unfortunately, Ms. Weirs chose to ignore any safety precautions when using fertilizer products on a daily basis for 4 years. Throughout the course of this trial, you are going to hear the other half of the story through Lush Fertilizer's 3 witnesses. First is Mr. Blake Doncourt, the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer. He will tell you that he will tell you that Lush cares passionately about the environment and actually donates 10% of its profits to nonprofit organizations committed to decreasing the world's nitrogen footprint. He will tell you that because Lush cares about the environment and its consumers, they extensively tested their products to ensure their safety. You will hear that these tests demonstrated that there is no valid scientific evidence showing that Drufo is carcinogenic to humans. Mr. Doncourt will testify that if he had been made known of any such evidence, he would never have put Drufo on the market. You will hear that Lush felt confident in putting Drufo directly on the market because it was safe. Finally, Mr. Doncourt will testify that even though it was safe and it wasn't required, Lush Fertilizer put warning labels on their packaging and recommended that consumers wear protective gear when using their products, just out of an abundance of caution. Secondly, you will hear from Skylar Weirs, an investigative journalist who has researched extensively on the health concerns of Drufo. She is also Dakota Weirs' twin sister. She will tell you that Drufo is designed to prevent, she will tell you that she has spent almost a year researching the health concerns of Drufo and whether there is a causal link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and that she found no conclusive evidence that Drufo is tied to cancer. Instead, you will hear that she found abundant research tying other chemicals to cancer, chemicals that are not found in Lush fertilizer. You will hear that she researched all of this before Dakota Weirs developed cancer, so Skylar Weirs has no dog in this fight. Thirdly, you will hear from Dr. Devin Williams, the leader of Lush Fertilizer's Research and Development Labs and the chair of Lush's Ethics Committee. Dr. Williams will tell you that Drufo was designed to prevent the user and the environment from harmful exposure to nitrates and other harmful chemicals. He will explain to you that Drufo is not only non-carcinogenic, but also safer than other chemicals and fertilizers because it does not need to be used as often. Dr. Williams will finally explain to you that Drufo has been proven to be safe, and sorry about that. Dr. Williams will explain to you that there is no causal relationship between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and any studies coming forth saying that it does cause cancer are based in unreliable data and unreliable testing. Ladies and gentlemen, at the conclusion of this trial, Judge Levin will instruct you that the plaintiff has a burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not, that Lush Fertilizer failed to use reasonable care in putting its products on the market, and that failure caused Ms. Weirs to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. We submit to you that the plaintiff will not meet their burden. Because the plaintiff has the burden of proof, she gets to present her case first. We ask that you do not come to any conclusions before you have heard from the defense. After you have heard from the defense, seen all of the evidence for yourselves, my co-counsel Jasmine Macievich will ask you to find Lush Fertilizer not liable and instead find Ms. Weirs is responsible for her own injuries.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. With that, is plaintiff's counsel prepared to proceed with their case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand. Ms. Weirs, will you please state your name and spell your last name for the court record?
Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Will you please tell the jury a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm 20 years old. In high school, I was quite active in the community. I did volunteering. I was part of the NHS.
Do you have any hobbies, Ms. Weirs?
I do. It's playing the piano.
And where did this interest begin?
It began when my grandfather passed away. He was an avid pianist, and I took a liking after his death.
Did you pursue the piano at all?
I did. I actually became the best in the state, I believe. I mean, people from all around the states used to come watch me.
And were you ever thinking about college, Ms. Weirs?
I was. I actually got accepted to Juilliard. Only the top 7% of the best get accepted.
Now, I want to talk about your employment history a little bit, Ms. Weirs. Do you work at all?
I do not currently.
And did you used to work?
I did.
Where did you work?
I worked at Haven Landscaping as a fertilizer. I wasn't old enough to work the machinery yet.
So what type of work did you typically do then?
I just specifically just the fertilizing.
And what type of clothing did you wear while you spread fertilizer?
Short sleeve shirt and shorts.
Now I want to touch back on your piano playing for a moment. Are you still planning on attending Juilliard in the fall?
Unfortunately, no.
And why is that?
I got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Do you mind telling me what that is?
It's cancer.
And what were your symptoms like with this cancer?
It was horrible. I mean, my hands would swell, my abdomen would swell, I would get headaches, fevers. I mean, it was just terrible.
And what was the process like coming to this diagnosis?
That was horrible too. I mean, no doctor could figure out what I had. I had medical bills racking up even before I got diagnosed.
And what were you told about your recovery from this cancer?
I had a very low recovery chance.
And how did these symptoms fare with your piano playing?
I could no longer just sit on the bench to even play a concerto anymore.
So the loss of playing piano, how did that affect you?
I mean, the whole reason I started playing piano was to feel closer to my grandfather, and I also had a liking to it, but I lost both of that.
Now I'm going to back up for just a moment. I want to talk about what occurred when you made the connection between your diagnosis and Lush fertilizer. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I was sitting at home and I saw a news article about Drufo and cancer.
And what did you proceed to do?
I was curious if I had any fertilizers that I used at my job that had Drufo in it. So I called my manager and he got me a product label that I used.
Ms. Weirs, can you please refer to what has been marked as Exhibit 1? I'm going to now ask our timekeeper to also display Exhibit 1 for the jury.
Before you do that, before you display it to the jury, defense counsel, do you have any objections to this being shown to the jury?
This document has not been entered into evidence, and until it does, I request that it does not get shown to the jury.
All right. Well, we're going to constructively assume the jury is not seeing it, but it will be displayed so that I can
Thank you, Your
review it.
Honor. I'll give my timekeeper a moment. Now, Your Honor, I would like to introduce Exhibit 1 for the record. Opposing counsel has a copy of Exhibit 1 already. Now, Ms. Weirs, do you recognize this?
I do.
And what is it?
It is a Lush fertilizer label.
And how do you know?
I see the title Lush fertilizer on it.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of the Lush fertilizer label that you worked with, that your boss sent you?
It is.
Your Honor, I would like to move Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objections, Ms. Clark?
No, Your Honor.
Granted, you can display it to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, when you took a look at this label, what did you notice?
It has Drufo on it.
And did you do any additional research on these Drufo products?
I did.
And what did you find?
Drufo's not in the UN.
Can you elaborate on that for me, how you made that discovery?
First, I talked to my father about all this, and he helped me research, and we got a French label.
Your Honor, I would like to introduce Exhibit 2 for the record. I'm going to ask our timekeeper to display Exhibit 2. Exposing counsel has a copy of Exhibit 2 already.
And we'll assume that the jury can't see it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, do you recognize this?
I do.
What is it?
It's the French label.
How do you know?
It's written in French.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of the French label that you found in your research?
It is.
Your Honor, I would like to move Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Ms. Clark, any objection into this being entered into evidence and displayed to the jury?
Yes, Your Honor. This document is hearsay for multiple reasons. First of all, being that this document is written in French and the plaintiff does not know French. So to get the translation of these ingredients, they would have had to use a translator, and we cannot authenticate the accuracy of this translation. In addition, we cannot be sure that this label is in fact from Lush Fertilizer because it does not have the corporate logo or any other record that it came from Lush Fertilizer. So on those two accounts, this document should not be admitted into the court.
Response?
Your Honor, it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter. It's not an out-of-court statement. And additionally, the opposing counsel has a chance to cross-examine.
If it's not being used for the truth of the matter, what's it being used for?
Just establishing the research that my client underwent.
Can you lay any additional foundation as to how she knows that this is from Lush Fertilizer and what translation efforts were made?
I can re-ask some of the questions I previously asked for my witness.
I'm concerned about the translation as well as the fact that it doesn't say Lush on it. So if you can lay additional foundation, I think that would assuage some of my concerns.
Okay. Ms. Weirs, can you elaborate on the research you conducted to find this French label for me, please?
Well, to be more specific, me and my father did this, and when we did the research, we specifically went to we found the label, as I previously said, and my father, it was originally in French, and my father helped with the translation of it.
I'm going to go ahead and admit this into evidence, but Ms. Clark, you are more than welcome to have a fulsome cross-examination as to the origins of this document as well as the translation, but this is now going to be entered as Exhibit 2.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, Ms. Weirs, what stood out to you on this French label?
There was no Drufo.
And did you do any research as to why?
I did some research into why the specific country did not, and I found there's no Drufo in any of the UN.
And did you do any research as to why that is?
I found out that it wasn't allowed because it was dangerous reasons.
Now, I want to move to a discussion about your twin, Skylar, for a moment. Tell me about your relationship with Skylar.
As kids, we had a quite good relationship, but over the years, we kind of spread apart.
And how has she reacted to your diagnosis?
Not very well.
How has this affected your relationship with her?
It's even spread it farther apart, unfortunately.
And because you and Skylar are twins, was there ever concern that she would develop the same diagnosis?
No, because non-Hodgkin lymphoma is environmental, but Skylar is allergic to grass, so she never really had the same environmental effects as I did.
Thank you, Dakota. That will be all, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Are you prepared to proceed with cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. I'm very sorry for the circumstances that have led you here. I understand you're here today because of your non-Hodgkin lymphoma. You believe the sole cause of this to be your use of Lush fertilizer, correct?
Yes,
You came in contact with this product when working as a landscape technician for Haven Landscaping, is that right?
that is correct.
You worked for Haven's Landscaping for several years,
Yes,
and during that time, Lush fertilizer wasn't the only fertilizer that you used, was it?
no, but it was one of the more prominent ones that had a cause to cancer.
You used several other fertilizers and lawn chemicals during the several years that you worked as a landscaping technician.
Yes, but none of them had any other causation to any sickness.
And you only sued Lush Fertilizer for failing to ensure your safety.
Yes,
And you sued Lush Fertilizer after watching a story on the news about Drufo, is that right?
not right after. I mean, I did research.
And remind me, your research included Exhibit 2, correct?
Yes,
And that label was found on Google, is that right?
yes,
And the label was translated through Google Translate?
no.
Where did the translation come from, Ms. Weirs?
My father.
And in addition, you ran that label through Google Translate, is that right?
That is not correct.
Ms. Weirs, do you remember giving a statement before you appeared in court today?
I do.
Were you under oath when you gave that statement?
I was.
Would you please read from lines, excuse me for 1 second. From lines 101 and 102 in your witness statement?
Yes. I wrote down all the ingredients exactly as they were written, and I ran it through Google Translate.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. So I'd now like to talk to you about the precautions you chose not to take as a landscape technician. Isn't it true you were always told to wear long sleeves when using fertilizer at your job?
I was not always told, but I was, yes, recommended.
And isn't it true that you were always told to wear pants when using fertilizer at your job?
Yet again, I was not always told, but yes, I was recommended.
Ms. Weirs, do you remember being under oath when you provided your witness statement before court today?
I do.
Could you please read from lines 64 and 65 of that statement for me?
We were also technically supposed to always wear long pants, long sleeves, pants, and gloves when using fertilizer.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. And isn't it true that you were always told to wear gloves when you used this fertilizer?
I did wear gloves, actually.
And it is true that you were told to use them when using fertilizer?
Yes, and I did.
And isn't it true that you were always told to wear a mask when using fertilizer at your job?
Yes,
Do you still have a copy of Exhibit 1 in front of you, Ms. Weirs?
I do.
I'd now like you to refer to the second column under user safety recommendations, where it says, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 face mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment. Users should wash hands before and after use of this product. Was I reading that correctly?
You were.
Thank you. Despite these warnings, you only wore shorts and a t-shirt, as you say, when you used fertilizer at Haven's Landscaping?
Yes, but I also wore gloves and I washed my hands.
But you didn't cover your face either, did you?
No, I mean, most people don't cover their face when they're gardening.
So you were warned about the safety procedures around Lush fertilizer, but you chose not to follow them, is that right?
I was never really warned specifically. I was 14, so 14-year-olds don't really read labels.
But were you warned by your boss about precautions to take when using fertilizer?
It was under the contract, but nothing else.
Is that a yes, Ms. Weirs?
Maybe once.
Is that a yes, Ms. Weirs?
Sure, you could say that.
And you chose not to follow those safety procedures, is that right?
I did follow some of them, but not all of them.
And you never sued your employer, Haven Landscaping, for ensuring that you took the proper precautions every day at work?
It's not their fault. It's Lush Fertilizers for not putting that I could get cancer from this on there.
I'd now like to talk to you about the warning labels on the other fertilizers that you used. In addition to Lush Fertilizer, the other fertilizers and chemicals that you used often had some sort of warning on the packaging, is that right?
I have no idea.
Ms. Weirs, would you like me to refresh your memory?
Sure.
In lines 89 and 92 of your witness statement, you specifically detail that other fertilizers and chemicals Havens used often had some sort of warning on the packaging. The warnings help customers take certain precautions while using the product.
Yes.
And some of these chemicals instructed that the product should only be used outdoors, is that right?
Yes.
And despite these warnings, you only used those products, you often used those products indoors, is that right?
Indoors with an open roof.
And some of the warning labels on those other fertilizers requested or instructed.
Objection, Your Honor. Those other warning labels are not in evidence today and cannot be discussed.
Response?
Your Honor, this fact is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but for the effect that it had on the listener.
Have you demonstrated that if you can lay foundation that the witness that you're talking to is familiar with what these labels say without actually looking at them, then I'll allow you to ask questions about it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, are you aware of what was on the warning labels of the other fertilizers?
I was not.
Do you remember being under oath when you provided a witness statement before your appearance in court today?
I was.
If you could please refer to line 91 and 92 of that witness statement. It says some instructed that mask or eye coverings were necessary. Others instructed that the product should only be used outdoors. So Ms. Weirs, again, some of the warning labels instructed that a mask or eye coverings were necessary. Is that right?
Yes.
And I'll briefly interrupt Ms. Weirs. We are running on a fairly tight schedule here today. And I would advise you that if there is information that you are aware you have previously sworn to under oath, to please remain within those bounds.
One more question, Your Honor. So Ms. Weirs, you neglected to follow more than one company's warnings from their fertilizers, is that right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
So you neglected to follow more than one company's warnings on their fertilizers, is that right?
I guess you could say that.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Ms. Dunn?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, I just want to clarify that you were never reprimanded for not wearing protective material, correct?
I was never.
And you were never made aware that cancer could have been a potential consequence at 14 years old?
No, never.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Clark, any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Ms. Dunn, I will allow you to call your next witness.
Your Honor, I would like to call Carson Durst to the stand, please. Could you please state your first and last name and spell your last name for the records?
My name is Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. Ms. Durst,
Where are you currently working?
Currently, I am lead product manager for Terra's Greenery.
And where did you work before Terrace?
I worked at Lush Fertilizer.
And what were your responsibilities at Lush Fertilizer?
I was an intern on the research and development team.
Did you sign any paperwork when joining the company?
I've signed a lot of papers in my career.
Could one of those documents have been a non-compete agreement?
I'm sure there was a non-compete somewhere in there.
Could you please tell us about your education?
Well, actually, I went to Arizona State University where I got my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
And what is the name of the CEO of Lush Fertilizer?
Oh, Blake Doncourt.
And could you please tell us about your relationship with the Doncourt family?
Yes, actually, well, Blake has children, and his oldest son, Charles, and I essentially grew up together. I mean, we met through traveling soccer, where he and I became best friends, and we spent almost every second of every day together. They drove me to their lake house in the summer and to our soccer games, and I feel like I became a part of their family through the way, and Blake was like a father to me.
And where did your life take you after you finished your education?
Well, I became an intern on the research and development team at Lush in 2003.
And as you spent more time with Lush, were you promoted?
I was, yes.
Does Lush manufacture a fertilizer with a chemical compound known as Drufo?
They do.
And could you please tell us what Drufo is?
Drufo is a patented bonding agent that is used to preserve fertilizers.
And you were tasked with researching it?
I was, yes. Actually, at the time that I had joined Lush, they were in the process of testing the safety of Drufo, and I personally was tasked with researching a chemical compound where I had found a study from the UK that showed that Drufo could be potentially carcinogenic in rats, which was obviously very concerning.
Your Honor, I would like to ask my timekeeper to display what is marked as Exhibit 3. The opposing counsel has a copy.
Yes, you can show that presumptively not before the jury. Also, if counsel for both defendant and plaintiff can just remind me of how to pronounce your last names. I don't want to get it wrong.
My last name is Valina.
My last name is Michievich.
Michievich. Okay, thank you. And the timekeeper can display that.
Ms. Durst, do you recognize this?
I do.
What is this?
This is the test that they ran in the UK for rats.
Is this a fair and accurate copy?
It is.
Your Honor, I'd like to move to enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Ms. Michievich, any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. I would object to this exhibit being entered on the basis of it as hearsay. It was not a study that was conducted by Ms. Durst herself, and it is simply one that she found presumably on the internet or some other location. So it therefore is outside the scope of the case.
Remind me, is Ms. Durst an expert witness?
She is not.
All right. If you can establish how she, how she came upon this, why she relied on it, etc.
Well,
that would be important to me in permitting this into evidence for a lay witness.
Yes, Your Honor. So again, Ms. Durst, what were you tasked with on the research and development team?
At the time, I had been tasked with researching a specific chemical compound, which is C3NOP3. And at the time, since I was researching this, I had come across this study. And since it's from the UK and I found that it could be proving the carcinogens in rats, I found it a very reliable source.
Could you please reference the title up top and tell us who conducted this study?
Yes, are you referencing the people or the board? So it says Matisse Bernard Cancer Research Center, European Foundation of Oncology and Environmental Sciences.
Your Honor, this was conducted by the European Foundation of Oncology and Environmental Sciences. Therefore, it is a reliable source, and therefore I'd like to move to enter this into evidence.
Ms. Michievich, do you have any new objections?
Again, Your Honor, we would like to request that a limiting instruction be implemented for the jury, that the statement not be considered for its truth, but rather exclusively for its effect on the listener, as it is still not a study performed by any witness in the case.
I'm going to actually, no. Ms. Valena, do you have any response?
That this document is offered to prove possible evidence of Drufo being carcinogenic, And if the other attorney would like to cross-examine this, they may.
I'm going to overrule the objection. This is a scientific study. You've provided a sufficient basis for its reliability through a witness who would have familiarity with that. You may proceed, but Ms. Macievich, obviously you're welcome to cross-examine. You can enter this as Exhibit 3.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Durst, back to the study. Could you please reference the column marked as methods?
Yes, I may.
And in the fourth paragraph, it says the duration of the study. Could you please tell us how long was this study?
That study was roughly 147 weeks, which is about 3 years.
And there were in-house studies conducted at Lush, correct?
There were, and those studies actually only lasted a duration of around 1 month. And looking at this study compared to the Lush studies, 3 years is going to be far more conclusive than a 1 month in-house study. And since this study was not done in-house and by a third-party research lab, it's going to have far less chance of being potentially biased compared to Lush's.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness cannot testify to the validity of the study as they are not an expert witness.
Response?
That my witness was tasked with researching the safety and they found a sole source because they were an intern. So they used the expertise of the European Foundation of Oncology and Environmental Sciences to further their research.
Reply?
Your Honor, opposing counsel has not laid sufficient foundation to demonstrate this witness is actually qualified in the field of oncology and toxicology, and therefore they cannot testify to the scientific validity of any of the results of this case.
I'm going to sustain the objection. You have a lay witness here. She can't testify as to anything, that would require specialized knowledge. She can testify as to what she made of this, why she relied on it. She can't testify as to its objective reliability.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll move on. Ms. Durst, could I please ask you to reference the results column and to tell us the results of this study?
Yes, give me one moment. My vision's not very good. So in the second paragraph, it says, when comparing lifespan exposure during prenatal and postnatal life, we have shown that prenatal exposure to C3N09P increases the incidence of lymphomas and leukemias. So obviously looking at this, it is talking about the exposure and the fact that it can potentially cause leukemias and lymphomas, which should be obviously very concerning, considering that this was in the results column.
Thank you, Ms. Durst, and thank you, timekeeper. That is no longer necessary. So, Ms. Durst, with the results of this study, what did you do with them?
Obviously, I was concerned, so I figured I might as well bring these to my higher-ups at the time. I was not the only scientist who was concerned about this, so another one and I had gone to my executives about this. And when I was flagrantly ignored by them, I had done enough of it, and I had brought it to Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush.
And then what happened after that?
Well, he got very angry at me and ended up in a fight, but besides the fact that that fight had happened, he was very angry at me, and this conclusion that I had reached was not one that he wanted to hear. And my colleagues had found out about this, and I was brutalized, and my work environment became very cold and very unprofessional. And I realized that that was the beginning of the end for Lush, for me.
And after this, did you begin looking for new job opportunities?
I did, yes.
And was this a direct violation of the non-compete agreement we mentioned earlier?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. No further questions.
Ms. Macievich?
May I proceed?
May.
Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. You used to be best friends with Charles Doncourt, correct?
Yes, I did.
And it is true that Blake Doncourt, Charles's father, is the owner of Lush Fertilizer.
He is.
So you attended Sunday meals with the Doncourts, right?
I did, yes. I was very close with their family.
You took vacations with them to their lake house?
Objection,
Yes.
Your Honor, relevance.
Ms. Macievich?
Yes, Your Honor. These questions are irrelevant because I am. They are going to demonstrate the potential bias of the witness within the scope of this case.
Ms. Valena?
I just do not see how Sunday dinners, etc., have any relevance to this case. We've already established that they have a past relationship.
We generally allow very broad latitude when it comes to demonstrating bias, so I'll allow you to proceed, but with a limited rope.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Durst, you would agree that the Doncourts were like family to you?
At some point in my life, they were.
You would even describe Blake and Charles as the family you never had, correct?
Yes, that's true.
So you went to college with Charles?
I did, yes.
And shortly before graduation, you still hadn't found a job.
It's hard to find jobs coming out of college for chemical engineering.
And you weren't at the top of your class in college either, were you?
I was second.
While you were home for spring break, you told Charles about your troubles finding any post-graduation employment.
Yes.
And Charles told you that Lush Fertilizer was hiring summer interns.
Yes.
And Charles told you that his dad, Blake Doncourt, would pull some strings for you at Lush Fertilizer.
He did say that, but I believe my application was fair and honest as everyone else's.
That's a yes, Ms. Durst?
It was, yes.
And you got the job.
I did, but as I said, I believe my application was as fair as anyone else's.
You got the job even though positions like that are hard to come by for people like you who lack any prior experience.
I'm sorry, I did get my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
But you lacked any prior experience with employment in the field of chemical engineering, correct?
Like we've established, I was recently out of college, so yes.
Yes. And in your position, you were tasked with researching Drufo, right?
Yes.
You found one study indicating that Drufo may be carcinogenic in rats.
Yes.
But you never found any studies indicating that Drufo has hazardous effects on humans, did you?
Rats are commonly tested on before products are released to humans. It would be unethical to be testing these products on humans. So the fact that it could be potentially carcinogenic in rats should be concerning.
Yes, Ms. Durst, but that was not my question. You did not find any studies that said that Drufo had hazardous effects on people, did you?
None in humans.
It's true that even company-wide studies did not conclude that Drufo has adverse effects, correct?
You're right, they did not conclude that, but
Honor hearsay.
It wasn't potentially concerning.
If the witness could, can
Sorry.
you repeat the question?
The question was, it is true that even company-wide studies did not conclude that Drufo has adverse effects, correct?
Ms. Valena, do you want to elaborate on your objection?
Yes, ma'am. She is referring to other company studies, but those are nowhere to be found in evidence. Neither were they referenced any or before any time during the examination.
Response?
Your Honor, opposing counsel opened the door to this line of questioning on direct when they established that Ms. Durst has a past work experience with working with Lush Fertilizer and therefore should be able to testify to the company-wide studies that were performed at her employment, during her employment. May I respond, Your Honor, please?
You may.
My client was only tasked with researching Drufo for Lush Fertilizers, no other companies, Your Honor. To reference these other studies has nothing to do with our case specifically. May I respond?
No, I'm going to sustain the objection, but I am going to tell you that you may inquire about other studies with which she is familiar. And once you've established familiarity with those studies and recall of what she learned from those studies, then you may inquire as to the results of them.
Okay, Your Honor, I believe my question was confusing for opposing counsel, so I can restate it. It is true that even other company-wide studies at Lush Fertilizer did not conclude that Drufo has adverse effects, correct?
Hold on, Ms. Durst. I've ruled that question as, even as you restated it, it's still outside the bounds of what I'm comfortable with. So
all right, I can move on.
If you want to go into this, you can proceed with a different line.
All right, Ms. Durst, I'd like to shift your attention to your work performance at Lush. Toward the end of your employment, you received several unfavorable performance reviews. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe I was facing prejudice by my colleagues.
In fact, you received an abysmal performance review in early 2005.
Yes, that's true.
And your work was also criticized as being of lower quality as well.
Yes.
Your colleagues began to confront you regarding your contributions to work projects.
I believe that my colleagues had issues with me considering the fact that I had reached a conclusion on the studies that they did not want to hear.
Is that a yes or no to my question, Ms. Durst?
Can you repeat the question?
Your colleagues began to confront you regarding your contributions to work projects, right?
Contributions to projects they weren't working on?
I am not aware. It's simply the work projects that you contributed to.
I'm not sure.
All right, we can move on. You were accused of just skating along and not pulling your weight.
I'm sure my colleagues would say that.
And furthermore, you were accused of being untouchable in the workplace due to your relationship with the Doncourts, correct?
That's true, but it was not a factor in my workplace now.
But you no longer work at Lush, do you?
I don't work at Lush anymore.
Is it true that you were fired?
It was, yes.
In fact, before you were fired, you started working for another job already. Started looking for another job. I apologize.
Yes, at the time I had realized I had absolutely no future with Lush, so I decided I needed to find a work environment that could suit the needs I had.
It's true that before you left Lush, you had already been hired at Terra's Greenery.
That's true.
And Terra's Greenery is Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor.
They are, yes.
When you applied to Terra's Greenery, you knew that there was nothing but bad blood between Blake Doncourt and the CEO of Terra's.
Yes, but I'm not sure why that matters.
Despite knowing all of this, you accepted a product development engineer position at Terra's Greenery.
Yep.
And it's true that you left Lush for Terra's because you thought it would anger Blake.
Yes, that is true. I feel
Okay,
since he had
so-
wronged me, it might have been fairest for me to wrong him.
You did so because you thought it would get Blake's goat.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Valena, do you have any follow-up redirect questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, you are aware that you did violate that non-compete agreement, correct?
Yes, I did that willingly.
But you did that willingly because you were ostracized and ridiculed, correct?
Yes, my colleagues treated me like I was trash. It was not a work environment that I enjoyed being in.
And because you brought them a valid study and they ignored it, correct?
Yes, they had completely disregarded the fact, because I was an intern at the time. I believe that since they flagrantly ignored me and treated me like such, I might as well go work for a company that would treat me like I was a person.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. No further questions.
Ms. Macievich, any recross?
No recross at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Durst.
The plaintiff would now like to call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Please proceed.
All right. Hello, Dr. Rogers. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Dr. Casey Rogers. That's Rogers.
So, Dr. Rogers, could you tell us about your educational background?
Well, I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology from University of California, Berkeley, as well as a bachelor's in science in agriculture and chemistry from Colorado State University.
And what about your professional background?
Before my PhD, I was a research analyst for a multinational major chemical company, and currently I'm a professor in the horticulture and entomology departments of Berkeley.
And how long have you been at that job?
About 25 years.
At this time, I would like to ask you to turn to Exhibit 6 to get that screen shared as well. All right, Dr. Rogers, do you recognize this exhibit?
I do.
What is it?
It's my resume.
And how do you know?
Well, I wrote it, and it also does have my name at the top.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of the resume you prepared prior to today's hearing?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to move Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Mr. Senior, any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
You can enter it in. It'll be, is that Exhibit 4, 5?
Exhibit 6.
Oh, Exhibit 6.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Rogers, at this time, I would like you to move to Exhibit 7. Do you recognize this exhibit?
I do.
And what is it?
It's a list of all my published works.
And how do you know that?
Well, I remember working on these projects individually.
At this time, I would also like to move Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Mr. Senior, any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Granted, we can move it into evidence.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Rogers, I would like to focus a little bit more on your published works. Are any of your publications directly related to the use of Drufo?
4 of them.
Could you elaborate on those studies?
Well, my studies focus in on pesticides and the harmful effects of them on the body.
And have these works been peer-reviewed?
They have.
And do you believe that your testimony and the study you conducted will be helpful in assisting the judge or jury understand the facts of this case?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, at this time, I would now like to tender this witness as an expert in the field of agriculture and entomology.
Mr. Senior, any objections or need for voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense requests a brief voir dire.
Granted.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Rogers. I'm just going to ask you about some of your qualifications. First of all, you are not a medical doctor.
Okay. I am not.
And so by extension, you do not go to medical school, correct?
I have not yet.
And so you do not have a medical license?
So far, no.
And so you have not diagnosed a patient with any form of cancer, let alone non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Excuse me, lymphoma.
No, but I am fairly educated on the topic of oncology.
But you've also never treated any patient with cancer, is that true?
That's true.
And additionally, you do not hold a toxicology degree?
I don't, but a lot of agriculture, horticulture, and entomology is intertwined with toxicology.
But you do not have a degree in toxicology?
So far, no, but I do know a lot of the subject.
And you do not hold any certifications within the field of toxicology either, do you?
I don't yet.
Your Honor, the defense does not object to Dr. Rogers having expert opinions on horticulture and pesticides in general. However, we anticipate that she will try and render medical or opinions of medical causation, and we do object to these as we do not believe that she has the proper education or experience in order to lay these opinions.
Ms. Sachs, reply or response?
At this time, Dr. Rogers would like to be admitted as an expert in the fields of agriculture and entomology. And under Rule of Evidence 702, an expert only needs to be qualified in one of 5 factors, those being knowledge, skill, experience, training, and education, in which Dr. Rogers does qualify in.
Mr. Senior, reply.
We do not object to Dr. Rogers being admitted as an expert in agriculture and horticulture. However, as said previously, we anticipate she will try and render opinions of medical causation, which we do object to.
All right, Miss, I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection, but nice voir dire. Ms. Rogers, don't go giving testimony about how to remove a tumor, and I think we'll be good.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Will do.
Moving on. Dr. Rogers, you said you worked with Drufo in the past. So how did it catch your attention in this case?
Honestly, it caught my attention as soon as it hit the market. It seemed completely rushed regarding safety. Now, you see, Drufo was developed in 2003 by Lush's research and development team. It contains nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and iron. But what really caught my attention is that it's carcinogenic in rats.
So what exactly did you do after that?
I conducted my own study. I gathered together a control group of people who had never been exposed to Drufo, people with occasional exposure and people with prolonged exposure, and I monitored their health over the years.
And what did you conclude?
I concluded that people with occasional exposure to Drufo were 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as people without exposure, and people with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as people without exposure. And you see, these are endocrine and exocrine-based varieties of cancer, and that includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Now, about the study, did you ever replicate it?
No, I didn't.
And why is that?
Well, the study that I conducted lasted a period of years, and with such a high risk of developing cancer after using this product, I found it completely unethical to expose more people to Drufo.
And has the study ever been peer-reviewed?
It has not.
And why is that?
Well, peer review typically takes over a year to complete. And with such high risk, I needed to get the word out about this product as soon as I could.
And has the study been published?
Not yet.
And why is that?
For the same reason that it hasn't been peer reviewed yet. It's just too timely for now, and I needed to get the word out ASAP.
So in your study, what did you find between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is caused by environmental factors, such as Drufo. It attacks the body's immune system, more specifically the white blood cells, also known as lymphocytes. And it can start out small and grow slowly, but it can also be fast and aggressive. And it can start anywhere in the body that contains any sort of lymph tissues, such as the lymph nodes, the spleen, and even the tonsils. And despite the 72% 5-year survival rate and the fact that it can be treated, it can never be cured.
So did you find a correlation between exposure to Drufo and cancer?
A crystal clear one.
But Lush Fertilizers has a large variety of products. How many of them actually contain Drufo?
Every single one of them. I measured it using a mass spectrometer.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Senior?
May I proceed?
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Rogers, you've talked a lot about your study on Drufo, but that study was never peer-reviewed, correct?
Not yet.
And so you decided to do your own study on the safety of Drufo after you had, quote unquote, been hearing potentially negative or hearing reports on potentially negative effects of the substance. Is that true?
I did, yes.
And so isn't it true then, Dr. Rogers, that you held the belief that Drufo may be carcinogenic going into your study?
Yes, that's true.
All right, thank you. Now let's talk about how your study was conducted. Your study did not compare the instances of cancer in farmers and gardeners who used Drufo to the instances of cancer in farmers and gardeners who did not, correct?
Farmers and gardeners who did not. Well, I did compare groups of people who had never been exposed and people who have prolonged exposure. So technically, yes,
And you would agree that farmers and gardeners are exposed to a myriad of different chemicals, such as herbicides and pesticides and fertilizers, that the normal person is not exposed to on a daily basis, correct?
Potentially.
But your study didn't test whether farmers and gardeners in general have higher instances of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma than the general population, right?
That's true.
As far as you're aware, or excuse me, moving on. As far as you're aware, you're the only person who has come to the conclusion that Drufo is carcinogenic in humans, correct?
So far.
And this is your first time testifying as an expert in court like this?
It is.
But you are hopeful it won't be your last, right?
That is true.
And you're being paid for your testimony today?
I am, but I don't see why that matters.
So if the jury finds this case in favor of Miss Weirs, you'll be at the front of several class action lawsuits regarding Drufo and its carcinogenity, correct?
Possibly. I'm not quite sure about that.
Would you like me to refresh your memory?
Sure.
All right. You have a copy of your witness statement in front of you?
I do.
Excuse me while I turn to it. Now, sorry. If you would like to read along, starting on line 16, this will be the first time I have ever actually had to testify as an expert witness. I am hoping, however, that it will not be my last. So, excuse me. So, Dr. Rogers, if this case is decided in the case, or if this case is decided on the side of the plaintiff, you expect to be at the front of several class action lawsuits, correct?
Possibly, yes.
And you will be paid for each of those lawsuits as well?
Possibly.
Moving on again, based on the results of your study, you recommend that anybody who works with Drufo should use protective equipment, such as long sleeves and long pants, correct?
That's right.
And you said that most importantly, people should be wearing N95 masks or respirators while using Drufo, while using Drufo products, correct?
That's also correct.
Are you aware of the safety label that made by Lush Fertilizer that the plaintiff used, yes, sorry, excuse me. Are you aware of the warning label on Lush Fertilizer products that also had these safety recommendations?
I am.
And were you present in the courtroom earlier today for Mr. Weirs' or Mrs. Weirs' testimony?
I was.
And you heard them say, testify that they were aware of those safety recommendations, correct?
I was, yes.
And you heard them testify that they ignored those recommendations?
Well, I also heard from her record that nobody else really used any sort of these
sorry.
recommended precautions.
But you did hear them say that they did not use those precautions either.
I did.
And so you heard them, you heard them say that they use Drufo products regularly without using long sleeves?
That's right.
But Dr. Rogers, it is still your position that they bear no responsibility for their decision to disregard these safety recommendations?
I mean, she should have taken the precautions, but it's still a well-known fact. Well, I concluded that Drufo does have a high probability of causing cancer, especially hers.
So is it your position that they bear no responsibility for choosing to ignore these safety recommendations?
Not exactly.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Senior. Any follow-up redirect questions?
Brief redirect, yes. Dr. Rogers, are all experts paid for their testimony no matter the outcome of the case?
They are.
And have you published any works on fertilizers without Drufo?
I haven't, but I have done extensive research on harmful chemicals and pesticides like Drufo, so I am very well-rounded when it comes to this subject.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Senior, any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. With that, Mr. Senior, are defendants prepared to proceed with their case in chief at this time? Or are there any other housekeeping matters from defendants before you proceed?
Sorry about that, Your Honor. No, the defense would like to proceed with the direct examination of their witnesses.
Do plaintiffs have any housekeeping matters before defendants begin their case in chief?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Clark, please proceed.
All right. The defense would like to call Mr. Blake Doncourt to the stand. Good afternoon, Mr. Doncourt. Please introduce yourself, spelling your last name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Doncourt, D-O-N-C-O-U-R-T-T.
Could you please describe your occupation to the jury?
I am currently the CEO of Lush Fertilizers Incorporated.
And what exactly does Lush Fertilizer do?
Lush Fertilizer is a fertilization company that has been improving quality and longevity of our clients' lawns and gardens through the use of our flagship product, Lush Fertilizer.
What has led to the success of your company?
I attribute the success of my company to the people working in our research and development team, who after many years have finally started production on a chemical compound known as Drufo.
Is the only goal of your company to improve the quality of lawns and products?
No, that's not our only goal. Our secondary goal is to spread an awareness about our rapidly changing climate by donating 10% of our annual profit to nonprofit charities who have the goal of decreasing our nitrogen emissions, cleaning our oceans, and educating people about how to better help our planet.
Have you or Lush Fertilizer won any awards for your humanitarian work?
Why, yes, we've won plenty of awards. But the most recent one was in 2019 when we won the prestigious SEAL Award. And in 2020, I was nominated for the Champions of the Earth Award, which I was hoping to receive in 2021.
Congratulations. So, Mr. Doncourt, why are you here in court today?
I am here in court today because myself and my company are being sued by Ms. Weirs under the false allegations that our chemical compound Drufo caused her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Has Drufo been approved by state and federal governments in the United States?
Why, yes, it has. After a number of studies committed by the EPA and our R&D team, it has been proven that under federal and state guidelines that it is perfectly safe for the general population to use. This simply means that we don't have to use warning labels on our product, yet we do out of an abundance of caution.
I'd now like to switch gears and ask you about a former employee named Carson Durst. Did you know Miss Durst while she worked at Lush?
Yes, I knew Miss Durst. In fact, she was a family friend, and during a momentary lapse in judgment, I had brought her into the company, and she showed promise as an intern and eventually became a full-time employee with our R&D team. After receiving a number of training through the R&D team, she showed general promise. Though, after a number of poor performance reviews and a few years working with us, her quality dropped. And unfortunately, we had to remove her from the company. Immediately afterwards, however, she went to our largest competitor, Terra's Greenery.
What is your response to Ms. Durst's claim that Lush Fertilizer covered up data that Drufo was carcinogenic and perhaps linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
That statement is completely false. Not once during the development of Drufo was ever a link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma ever made.
You previously mentioned that you use warning labels. What warning labels were Lush Fertilizer required to put on their product?
As I had said before, we aren't required to use warning labels due to the safety of our product. Yet we still use the standard model. That being to wear long pants, long sleeves, gloves, a respirator N95 mask, and to wash both the hands and equipment after use with our products.
Why didn't you say on the warning label that failing to wear protective gear would cause people to get sick or to develop cancer?
Because not once during the development of our product was ever a connection made.
If any valid scientific study or government agency had determined Drufo was carcinogenic, what would you have done?
We would never have used Drufo in our product to begin with. We're in the business of helping our clients, not hurting them.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Felena, you can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Doncourt. So, as the CEO of the company, you had intended for landscaping companies to use your products, correct?
That is correct.
And is it true that all of your products contain Drufo?
Not all of them. Some of our products do not contain it. Yet our flagship product does.
That is not what Dr. Casey Rogers has said earlier. And you are under oath, sir.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you're asking. Drufo isn't in all of our products. It is in a few of them, but not all of them. The products sold in the EU do not contain Drufo.
And in the US, the ones that are sold, do they all contain Drufo?
The products sold in the US do contain Drufo.
Thank you. So Drufo is the start ingredient that made Lush Fertilizer one of the largest fertilizer suppliers, correct?
It is.
And would an employee of a landscaping company such as Dakota Weirs be reasonably expected to use these products?
They would be.
And as the CEO of Lush, you oversee all operations of your business and operations, correct?
As a CEO, I oversee the company, yes.
So then you are familiar with all aspects of all operations that are going on, correct?
In a general sense, yes.
Is it safe to say that you prioritize consumers' faith in the safety of Lush?
Yes.
So you'd agree that significant research and testing was done on Drufo before putting it out on the market, right?
It was.
So you conducted 2 in-house studies addressing concerns that were raised about the possibility of Drufo being dangerous, right?
Could you please re-ask that? Sort of glitched out for a moment.
You conducted 2 in-house studies addressing concerns that were raised about the possibility of Drufo being dangerous, correct?
We did one study for the test. We did one study about the safety of Drufo and conclusively proved that it was non-carcinogenic.
How long was that study?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
This is very much so relevant because we are talking about the safety of Drufo, and as the CEO of the company, he put out a product that is potentially cancerous.
Reply.
I do not understand how the length of the study is relevant to whether Drufo is safe or not.
I'm going to be honest, I don't understand the question. How long was this, like how long were people studied for? Like how many years? I don't understand the question. So if you could rephrase to the witness and maybe we can go from there.
Yes, Your Honor, totally. Mr. Doncourt, the length of the study, the amount of time it took, are you aware how long it took?
I cannot recall the exact time, but I am aware that after it was extensively tested, it has been conclusively proven that Drufo is non-carcinogenic.
Sir, how long were you testing it for?
The exact time I cannot recall the exact length of time, though I know it was certainly enough to conclusively prove that Drufo is safe for the general public.
Could I please ask my timekeeper to pull up Blank Doncourt's witness statement?
Yes, you may.
Can my timekeeper please screen share? Oh, thank you. So it says, could my timekeeper please scroll?
And Ms. Valena, before you proceed with questioning, if you could please establish what this document is and how it came to be, that would be appreciated.
This is Mr. Doncourt's witness statement, and as a CEO of the company and ordering, supposedly he was the one that ordered these studies to be conducted, he should know how long they were and the specific methodologies that were used since he ordered them.
Ms. Valena, I'm going to ask that you establish it through questions to the witness.
I will move on, Your Honor. So, Mr. Doncourt, I thought you said you oversee all aspects and operations of your company, correct?
In a general sense, we do have teams that delegated to specific topics, such as our research and development team.
So you conducted these safety experiments. So is it safe to say you want potential buyers to feel good about your product?
Could you please re-ask the question?
You conducted in-house safety experiments, correct?
The research and development team did, yes.
And it is safe to say that you want potential buyers to feel safe about buying your products, correct?
That is true.
So you consider yourself a steward of proper safety practices, correct?
We prefer to keep our customers safe, yes.
Would you, as an advocate for the safety and well-being of the environment, want consumers to know potential risk present when utilizing your product that is potentially cancerous?
It isn't cancerous to begin with, but if there was such a risk, we would be informing our clients, yes.
Would you like to revisit your witness statement, Mr. Doncourt? I must remind you you are under oath. In your own words, you have said that there's little to no risk, and you just said that there was none.
I said there is no risk using our product.
Yet, according to your studies, there is little to none.
Little to none, as per what it was said, sorry. Little to none and there is no risk in this case are quite similar. For the purposes of the general use within the general population, the chances of developing anything is 0 to none due to the safety that has been proven by the study done by the EPA and our R&D team.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. So with all of this in mind, with these risks existing, where are they specifically to be found written in noticeable print on your packaging?
Could you please ask the question?
With the little to no risks existing, where are they to be found written clearly on your packaging?
Well, if you get it into your eyes, it could cause damage. But as for anything else, there is no risk. The only risk would be assuming that someone got it into their eyes.
Your Honor, could you please direct the witness to answer my question?
I think that the witness is being sticking within what the witness statement says. So I will not add any instruction, but I do caution all the witnesses to remain within the bounds of their witness statements.
Mr. Doncourt is not answering my question. I'm just simply asking, these risks, we see that they exist according to his witness statement. So I'm just asking where are they simply to be found on his packaging?
If you look in the packaging, the only risk that could be associated with our product is getting it into your eyes. Our product is not cancerous, nor can it poison our customer, nor is it reliable, nor is it toxic to say, well, we have those on the bottle. We're not going to lie to our clients. And it's under the assumption that there is a risk when there isn't.
Would baking Drufo eliminate all risks of it being cancerous?
It's not cancerous to begin with, so baking our product would do nothing. But yes, if our product was cancerous, baking would remove it.
Sir, are you even aware of the results of your in-house study?
I'm aware, and they've been conclusively proven that our product Drufo is non-cancerous, or is non-carcinogenic. My apologies.
But you are denying that a little risk is present.
I'm merely saying that our product is safe to use, and the risk associated is so small that for the general use of our product, it is safe.
But it exists, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Response?
The witness has not answered my question. Thank you.
Reply?
I stand by my objection.
Ms. Valina, you can rephrase it. I will give you one more try. I don't think you're getting the answer you want, but I do think you are getting an answer. I'll give you one more shot at rephrasing this before I tell you it's gonna come close to badgering.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Objection is well taken, Ms. Clark.
Is there zero risk or little to no risk?
It has been conclusively proven that our product is safe, and the risk associated is incredibly small. And when used in the general public, it does not cause any problems with our clients.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Doncourt. If you were in Dakota Wears' shoes and took a job with a landscaping company and were told to use a product that had such small risk but it didn't matter enough to the CEO, would you prefer that your risk be minimal or none at all?
I prefer none at all, but then again, I would also use I would also follow the proper safety procedures listed on the packaging.
In the absence of Drufo, would Lush be as profitable as it is currently?
Drufo does increase the profit of our company. If it was removed, it would dampen it.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Valina. Ms. Clark?
May I proceed with redirect?
You may.
Mr. Doncourt, on cross, you were asked a number of questions about baking your product. Why doesn't Lush Fertilizer bake their fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer doesn't bake Drufo because of the number of tests that have been done on it by the EPA and our R&D team, conclusively proven that it is non-carcinogenic, meaning that if we baked our product, it would do nothing.
And you mentioned that baking your product does, in fact, save a little bit of profit for the company. Where do those profits go?
Those profits go back into our company to allow us to grow, and 10% of the profit that we gain annually goes to nonprofit charities.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Ms. Valina, any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, is it true that you give 10% to charity annually?
It is.
And is it true that not baking Drufo saves you only 2% of your annual profits?
Yes, that is true.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Clark, Oh, thank you, Mr. Doncourt. You're excused.
Thank you.
Ms. Clark, whoever's next, if they want to bring in the next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Skylar Weirs to the stand. May I proceed?
I'm going to actually give Skylar 1 moment to change the name at the bottom of the screen because it does make it easier for me.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Swears. All right, Mr. Senior, you can proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Could you please state your name and last name for the jury, spelling your last name?
Good afternoon. My name is Skylar Weirs, spelled W-E-I-R-S.
And Ms. Weirs, what's your current occupation?
Currently, I work as a freelance investigative journalist for a magazine called The Rationalist.
And what is the Rationalist magazine?
The Rationalist is a science advocacy and education magazine published by the Rationalist Society.
And what is the Rationalist Society?
It's a nonprofit organization devoted to resisting the spread of pseudoscience and promoting scientific skepticism in certain fields.
Switching gears to how you conduct your journalism, as a freelance journalist, how are the topics that you write about chosen?
It can go one of two ways. Either publishers can come to me with a series of topics to write about, or I can go to them with the ideas of my own. But at the end of the day, they decide what gets published and what doesn't.
As a journalist, have you ever allowed for your personal opinions to influence your writing?
No, not at all. I believe it's my job as a professional journalist to completely remove my opinion and give the public a research that is fair and balanced.
And Ms. Weirs, when you're writing for The Rationalist, do you ever specialize in any topics?
Well, I read about a multitude of things, but I most frequently read about commercial agriculture and agritech.
What research specifically have you done on modern agriculture and agritech?
Some time ago, my editor came to me with a series of topics to write about, like genetically modified crops, modern agritech, specifically companies specializing in modern agritech, and that's kind of how I got introduced to JUFO. So for the majority of the year, I devoted all of my time to researching and studying these topics. I would start by reading various publications issued by agritech companies, and then I would track down and read each of the studies cited in those publications to make sure I turned over every last stone. But a majority of my information comes from reading that stuff.
Your Honor, based off of the pre-trial ruling of limine, the defense moves to enter Skylar Weirs as an expert in modern agriculture and agritech. We believe that we have demonstrated that she has spent considerable amount of time researching the relevant subjects and therefore holds greater knowledge than the average juror.
Ms. Dunn, response?
Permission to voir dire the witness, Your Honor.
Granted.
Ms. Weirs, did you ever go to college?
No, I do not have a college education.
So have you ever studied biology at the collegiate level?
No, I did not go to college.
Oncology, perhaps?
No.
Have you ever studied statistics?
No, I did not go to college.
And you only researched agritech for about a year, correct?
Yes, extensive research.
But during this time, you also worked part-time at Applebee's, correct?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? You broke up a little bit.
Yes, during this year of research, you worked at Applebee's, correct?
I did work at Applebee's, yes.
So is it safe to say your time was split during this year of research?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance, the fact that Ms. Weirs had a part-time job during her journalism is not indicative in any way of the quality of her journalism. A year is a year that she spent researching, and so she has spent a considerable amount of time. This questioning is irrelevant and doesn't serve to better the plaintiff's case.
Response, Ms. Dunn?
I'm not calling into question the quality of her research. I'm merely calling into question the amount of time she spent on her research. The attorney just testified that she spent a considerable amount of time researching and therefore qualifies in the category of knowledge. And I'm introducing this line of questioning to prove that she did not spend a considerable amount of time and therefore does not qualify.
Yeah, Mr. Skinner, I'm looking at a motion in limine here, which says that she will, she's going to be an expert only if you can demonstrate that she spent considerable time researching these things. So this is a perfectly appropriate area of questioning. Ms. Dunn, you can continue.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to reiterate my last question. In the year you spent researching, your time was split, yes?
Yes, it was split. But
Your
I
Honor,
put
sorry, please continue.
I put everything I had into researching these
Your
topics.
Honor, according to Rule of Evidence 702, though she isn't required to hold a specific degree, she does not qualify in any of the 5 categories: knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, and therefore should not be qualified as an expert witness in the field of agritech.
Ms. Weirs, was there more to your response that you wanted to get to before Ms. Dunn began her argument?
I don't believe so. I believe I was just saying, yes, my time was split, but I put a considerable amount of time in extensive research into writing and researching these topics.
All right, and I'm sorry to the timekeepers because I feel like that question where I had you give more testimony probably just totally screwed them up, so I'm sorry. Ms. Dunn, your argument is well taken. Your voir dire was well done. However, within the limited boundaries for which Ms. Weirs has been offered as an expert witness, she is competent to testify as an expert, but I would caution her not to proceed with any expert testimony beyond the very limited boundaries that she's qualified for.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Senior, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, is there anything unique about Lush fertilizers?
Yeah, Lush Fertilizer utilizes a truly revolutionary chemical called Drufo.
And what's so unique about Drufo?
Drufo has several benefits, one of them being that it's an effective pesticide, and another one being that it's truly an amazing bonding agent, meaning that it can stick to Lush Fertilizer's active ingredients and to the grass and prevents them from being washed away as quickly.
So about that first benefit, how does Drufo being an effective pesticide benefit the consumer?
It's beneficial because there's no need for Lush Fertilizer to add any other additional pesticides often found in other fertilizers like glyphosate and arsenic, which are categorized as carcinogens.
And can you briefly define what a carcinogen is?
A carcinogen is a substance that, if exposed to it, may cause cancer in certain cases.
Thank you. And so about the second benefit of Drufo, how does Drufo being an effective bonding agent benefit consumers?
Its ability to stick to the grass and Lush Fertilizer's active ingredients means that significantly less fertilizer needs to be applied and less often. So while other fertilizers need to be applied ballpark 5 to 6 times a year, Lush Fertilizer only needs to be applied 1 to 2 times a year and for the same results, which ultimately leads to less nitrogen exposure to both the consumer and to the environment.
And why is it important to reduce nitrogen exposure?
Nitrogen in certain forms can be considered as carcinogenic. So in its carcinogenic form, nitrogen has been known to contribute to
Objection, Your Honor. The witness can't test. The witness is not an expert in oncology and therefore cannot testify on behalf of the carcinogenic properties.
May I respond? Thank you. Your Honor, carcinogenic chemicals are very common within the field of agritech. And so by being an expert in agritech, Ms. Weirs can testify on whether or not a chemical itself is carcinogenic because she has done research on several carcinogenic chemicals. And so she is able to identify them. You're muted, Your Honor.
Reply.
Your Honor, once again, he's asking the witness to testify on behalf of the effects of these carcinogenic properties, and that is not something she studied or is an expert in.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection, but Mr. Senior, she is permitted to testify. I mean, I'm looking directly at what, she was offered for as an expert. She is allowed to testify as to studies, results of studies, information maintained by the USDA and NASDA, to the extent to which this information is contained in those studies. You can absolutely ask her about that, but you need to ask her through questions about research. So you may proceed with that instruction.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Weirs, based off of the studies that you've read and their findings, why is it important to reduce nitrogen exposure?
Nitrogen can be the cause of many diseases in its carcinogenic form, such as methemoglobinemia, various types of cancer, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. And based off of your year of research, have you found any source indicating a causal link between DRUFO and cancer?
In the year that I spent studying DRUFO, I did not find a single study that established a causal link between DRUFO and cancer, no. Instead, I only found evidence that DRUFO protects its consumers from exposure to dangerous pesticides and overexposure to nitrogen.
So if there have been no studies finding or claiming that DRUFO is carcinogenic, why are there campaigns trying to label it as such?
Objection, speculation.
May I respond? Your Honor, based off the fact that Ms. Weirs is an expert within the field of agritech, she should be aware of the business culture within agritech and the conflicts between major companies, which is what this question is alluding to.
Sustained, but you can lay foundation to get to that same place.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, in your witness statement, you touched upon the quote-unquote old guard of agriculture. Could you explain what the old guard is?
The old guard in agriculture, specifically in this case, refers to companies have been in the agricultural field for such a long time and who don't want to promote change.
And so, Mrs. Weirs, how have these companies tried to stifle the promotion of change?
This old guard is spending billions of dollars to ruin essentially Lush Fertilizers' reputation, because at the end of the day, they know that Lush Fertilizers' products are abundantly more effective than theirs.
And so how do Lush Fertilizer products compare to the products of this old guard?
All of my research suggests that Lush Fertilizers' products are the safest option out there and truly a game changer in terms of agriculture. In my personal opinion, I believe it was more than likely that Dakota was exposed to carcinogenic substances through the use of other fertilizers she may have used during her time at
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation once again.
Response?
Your Honor, my client is an expert. She is allowed to speculate on certain subjects, and the fact that the plaintiff of this case was exposed to agricultural chemicals, she can directly speculate on that as an expert in agriculture and agritech.
Ms. Dunn, do you need a reply?
Yes, Your Honor. He's asking the witness to testify on behalf of the other chemicals that Ms. Weirs was exposed to. But again, those ingredient lists and those chemicals are not in evidence, and therefore the witness has to speculate.
All right. Mr. Senior, I'm going to allow you to re-ask the question. Ms. Weirs, I am going to overrule the objection, but I am going to caution you to remain within the boundaries of your limited expertise.
All right, so Ms. Weirs, how do Lush Fertilizer products compare to the products of the old guard?
All of my research suggests that Lush Fertilizer is the safest option out there and a truly game changer in terms of agriculture.
Thank you. And so shifting gears, do you know, or how do you know the plaintiff of this case, Dakota Weirs?
Dakota is my twin sister.
And Ms. Weirs, what is the status of your relationship with your twin sister?
We haven't always been the closest. That could partially be due to us just having different interests or life just leading us down different paths. But at the end of the day, she's family and I'll always love her despite our differences.
Is your testimony today influenced in any way, shape, or form by your relationship with your twin sister?
No, not at all. I'm here today because I stand by my research and I know that there is no sufficient evidence to link DRUFO to cancer.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
You're muted, Your Honor.
Ms. Dunn, you may proceed with cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Thank you for coming in and testifying today. Now, you stated you write for Rationalist Magazine, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you've written several articles for them, yes?
Yes, I have.
And you also describe them as prominent, correct?
Yes, I have.
Have they won any awards, Ms. Weirs?
No, they have not.
So it's your own opinion then that makes them prominent?
Yes, it is, but my opinion is backed up by my belief that I have put in hours of work and extent to every article that I have written.
But just to reiterate, they haven't won any awards or any recognition?
No, they have not.
And you write on a variety of topics, correct?
I have, yes.
Does that include articles about UFOs?
Objection, Your Honor. The plaintiff is trying to admit, or objection relevance.
Response?
I'm establishing that the witness hasn't specialized on a single topic specifically within her research on agritech.
May I respond?
You may.
The fact that before her year-long delve into agriculture and agritech, Miss Weirs bounced around to several different subjects is irrelevant. It is a norm within journalism to sort of bounce around and maybe stick with one subject for a while before changing to a next that you focus on. The fact that she did write about UFOs at one point bears nothing on her credibility as an expert.
And I apologize for the interruption from my end. It's all my fault because they're very poorly trained. I'm going to overrule the objection. It was your election to retain this person as your expert witness. Her entire professional background has relevance and is admissible.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, to continue, you wrote about UFOs and you also wrote about flat earth theory, correct?
Yes, I have written about these subjects. It is a part of my job to write about and research and write about the topics that I am assigned to.
Now, in regards to Lush fertilizer, you claim that you know from your own research that Lush fertilizer is safe, yes?
Yes, I do believe that.
And you began this research for Rationalist magazine, correct? Ms. Weirs, do you need me to re-ask the question?
Yes, I'm sorry. There was a moment where I could not hear anything.
Don't worry about it. You began this research on agritech for Rationalist magazine, correct?
Yes, I have.
Now, is Rationalist magazine an academic journal?
It is a scientific advocacy and education magazine.
So it's not an academic journal, correct?
No, it's not.
Now, in this research that you did for this literary magazine on DRUFO specifically, you read publications written by other agritech companies, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And you reviewed the research written in those publications, yes?
I'm going to ask the timekeeper to go ahead and pause. It looks like Miss Weirs is frozen. Do you need to leave the Zoom and come back in if I give you a recess?
I believe I am all good now.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I can hear everything correctly as of now.
Ms. Weirs, please feel free to interrupt me if I glitch out again and let me know and I can pause.
Absolutely.
Now to restate my previous question.
Start the clock again. Go ahead, Ms. Weirs.
Thank you, Your Honor. You mentioned in your direct that you also reviewed information from the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of the State Department of Defense, correct? Or of Agriculture, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And after reviewing the information from all of these associations, you still made the claim that Lush fertilizer is a safe product, correct?
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily correlate with what the research showed, does it not?
I do not. Could you re-ask your question, please?
Yes. The research showed that the correlation between DRUFO and cancer was inconclusive, correct?
Correct.
And yet you made the statement that DRUFO is safe, correct?
I do heavily believe that DRUFO is safe, yes.
So essentially, your own opinion doesn't line up with the conclusions drawn by these advanced associations, correct?
I have not found sufficient proof that DRUFO is unsafe.
But can we agree that inconclusive and safe are not the same thing?
Yes, we can.
And additionally, despite having no formal college level training, you also claim that no one has the perspective on modern agritech that you do, correct?
I have said that, yes.
And you've only researched agritech for about a year, to reiterate.
Yes.
And yet you believe you're more knowledgeable than doctors who studied this topic for longer than a year, perhaps 10 years?
The articles that I have researched have stated heavily that DRUFO is safe for the environment and safer than option.
I'm just going to ask that you answer my question, Ms. Weirs. Do you believe that you are not more knowledgeable than doctors who studied this for 10 years?
Yes.
And have you discussed this research with other scientists?
No, I have not.
So you don't know if other scientists who do this for longer than a year and for a living even agree with your work?
No, I'm not aware of.
No further
any-
questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Weirs, I will allow you to finish your answer. I
Oh,
think that we had a
Sorry,
little
Ms.
lag.
Weirs.
It's
It glitched a little
lag
bit. And
I was just going to say that I'm not aware of any other scientific opinions other than the ones that I have read about and researched.
thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Mr. Senior, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Ms. Weirs, you were asked several questions about some of your previous escapades in journalism. Would you like to explain why you wrote about UFO culture and anti-vaxxers for the Rationalist magazine?
Yes, I wrote about these topics because the company that I write for has the main objective of resisting the spread of pseudoscience. So when I wrote about these topics, I was simply denouncing their merit because they are by definition pseudoscience.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Mr. Senior, if the next attorney for defendants. We'll give everybody a minute to change out their participant name.
If opposing counsel is ready to proceed, we would like to call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
You may proceed.
All right. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
My name is Dr. Devin Williams, spelled Williams.
And what is your occupation, Dr. Williams?
I am currently the head of the research and development lab at Lush Fertilizer, and I'm also the chair of the ethics committee.
Your Honor, permission to show the court, opposing counsel, and the witness a copy of Exhibit 9.
Granted.
Sorry about that. Give us 1 second. All right, Dr. Williams, what is Exhibit 9?
Exhibit 9 is a copy of my CV.
Does Exhibit 9 fairly and accurately lay out your educational background and qualifications?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Granted, it's admitted as Exhibit 9.
Permission to publish to the jury?
Granted.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, I'd like to walk the jury through your CV, starting with your education. Where did you go to school?
Sure. So I received my bachelor's of in toxicology from the University of Utah, and that's where I started my educational background. And I then moved on to Colorado State University, where I received my master's in toxicology, and I also completed a 5-year program at Colorado State University as well to get my PhD.
Can you explain to the jury what, oh, I apologize, continue.
Yeah, it was just in toxicology, the PhD was, I apologize.
Can you explain to the jury what toxicology is?
Yeah, so in its simplest terms, toxicology is the study of how foreign chemicals and substances affect the human body.
And Dr. Williams, what did you do after obtaining your PhD?
After obtaining my PhD, I went on to work at 2 separate teaching positions, one at the University of, or UC Anschutz, I apologize, and also Colorado State University, where I had both held teaching positions.
Are any of the courses that you currently teach relevant to your testimony today?
Yes, I would say all of the courses found on my CV are relevant to the case today because they all highlight how toxicology affects the human body, and more specifically, the 201. The 201 class focuses on how pesticides and fertilizers affect agriculture and the human body.
And do you currently hold any certifications in Colorado?
I do. I hold a certification in both clinical and forensic toxicology in Colorado.
Have you published any peer-reviewed articles?
I have. On the second page of my CV, you can clearly see all of the publications and presentations that I have on in toxicology that I've published.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to offer Dr. Williams as an expert in both clinical and forensic toxicology.
Ms. Sachs, any objection or voir dire?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, he will be considered an expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, how long have you been at Lush Fertilizers, or how long have you been at Lush Fertilizer?
I've been at Lush Fertilizer for 12 years now, and I've been the head of the R&D team for 7 years now.
What are your job responsibilities like?
My current job responsibilities are just assisting the R&D team to make sure everything that comes out of it is environmentally safe.
Dr. Williams, we've heard a lot about DRUFO today. What is DRUFO?
So DRUFO, in its simplest terms, is a bonding agent, and this bonding agent acts in DRUFO to bond the ingredients of DRUFO to the fertilizer and then to that grass to then cause no excess nitrate to be accumulated in the environment, and thereby stopping the eutrophication process.
What is eutrophication?
Well, eutrophication is the process of nutrients causing agricultural runoff.
And why should the jury care about how Lush Fertilizer interrupts the eutrophication process?
Well, the jury should be aware because Lush Fertilizer and many other agricultural products contain nitrogen. The problem is, though, is that nitrogen in and of itself is not the problem and is not harmful to humans. The problem comes about from the excess nitrogen that is found in these agricultural products that is then released to the environment. But the revolutionary thing about DRUFO is that it stops these excess nitrates from being released into the environment, stopping that eutrophication process.
If Lush Fertilizer is so safe, then why is it banned in the EU?
It is currently banned in the EU because the European Union has a ban on any sort of agricultural products that contain excess nitrates to be banned. And DRUFO does, however, contain nitrogen, but that is only the excess nitrogens that is stopped by DRUFO. So we are currently working on a study that will be published that I am confident will overturn the EU ruling.
Dr. Williams, have you come to any opinion as to whether DRUFO causes cancer?
Yes, it is my opinion that it is statistically significant that I'm sorry, could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, have you come to any opinion as to whether DRUFO causes cancer?
Yes, by the data I've looked at, it is in no way it does exposure to DRUFO cause any sort of cancer, the latter of which includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What did you rely on in reaching that conclusion?
Through my decades I have spent in my years of toxicology and through the data I've looked at, there has been no link that I've found between exposure to DRUFO and cancer.
Dr. Williams, were you present in court today for the testimony of Dr. Casey Rogers?
I was.
Have you reached any opinions regarding his research?
Sorry, I believe I'm frozen. Hello? Am I here?
Yeah, I can hear you. Would you like me to
I'm sorry, I froze again. Could you re-ask the question?
Yeah, for sure. Have you reached any opinions regarding his research?
I have. So Dr. Rogers' study is inconclusive at best, and the majority of his study, that is because it has never been peer-reviewed, it has never been replicated, and all of the methodology that was conducted in Rogers' study was insignificant at best.
Do you find his research to be reliable?
I don't find his research to be reliable at all, simply because of the a study that was never peer reviewed and was never replicated. And in science, a study needs to be replicated to thereby make sure that it is founded on firm beliefs and a proper foundation. So if a study is never replicated, the scientific community can never know if that study is proper and sure, and as well as the comparisons that Dr. Rogers made in his study was a comparison between farm laborers, simple gardeners, and people who had no exposure. And that's comparing apples to oranges when he should be comparing apples to apples, which would be the case of comparing farm laborers who had exposure to Drufo and farm laborers who had no exposure to Drufo.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Moving on, are you being paid for your testimony today?
I'm not being paid for my time and testimony today, and my salary that I receive at Lush will be the same this month as it was last month, and this case will not affect it in any way.
Returning to Mr. Weirs, or Ms. Weirs, do you have an opinion as to whether Drufo caused her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
It is my opinion to a high degree of scientific probability that Mrs. Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was not caused by exposure to Drufo.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Macievich. Ms. Sachs, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Williams. Thank you for being here today. So you said earlier that you lead the toxicology research and development labs, right?
I do.
And you also teach at the University of New Mexico College of Pharmacy?
I do. I'm a tenured assistant there.
And you teach a handful of courses there, right?
Yep, I do.
This keeps you very busy, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, the ample time is spent in my time at Lush and the university.
So is this why you never published any works on Drufo?
I conducted a singular study on Drufo that found that it was not carcinogenic, but yes, it was never published because there was no reason to publish it.
Drufo is only one chemical though, but you haven't published any works on any other fertilizers, have you?
That is correct, I haven't.
And were you involved in any of Lush's in-house studies on Drufo?
I don't believe I was, no.
Did you read these studies?
I was aware of these studies, yes.
But you don't know the methods that they used in these studies, do you?
I would not be aware of the study that was conducted to see that Drufo was carcinogenic, but all the time I've spent reviewing the data has shown that Drufo is not carcinogenic at all.
So since you were not involved in any of these brief studies and you aren't entirely aware of all the methodologies used, you don't know for certain that they are accurate, do you?
I would not be able to know the accuracy of these studies, but I'm able to know the accuracy of my own study and the other studies that I have reviewed, and those are accurate and show that Drufo is not carcinogenic.
Thank you. And Lush fertilizer products are banned in other countries by the EU, aren't they?
They are, and the entirety of the EU Lush products are banned.
But you are finishing a study that you think will be used to change that, yes?
Yes, I am confident to a high degree that the study I am conducting will make sure that the EU overturns its decision.
So this means that depending on the outcome of this case, your company would benefit financially from it, wouldn't they?
A part of the global market would be open if the EU decided to overturn its decision. So yes, money would come from the opening up of the EU market.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions.
Redirect?
We have no redirect at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Dr. Williams, thank you for your time. Before we proceed to closing arguments, Ms. Macievich, Ms. Sachs, do either of you have any housekeeping matters that you want to address for plaintiffs or defendants?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right, with that, Ms. Dunn, are you handling closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, please proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your time and attention throughout the trial today. My client, Dakota Weirs, was standing on the doorstep of an incredibly bright future. From a young age, her passion for the piano was her clear path forward in life.
What began as a hobby that bonded her and her grandfather bloomed into musical competitions and a full ride scholarship to Juilliard. Dakota Weirs was supposed to be flourishing in New York, but corner cafes and college dorms turned to hospital rooms and doctor's offices when this child was diagnosed with cancer. Now, they say that life is priceless, that there's no value or number to be assigned on a life that's well lived. But today, we uncovered the horrendous truth that Lush Fertilizer stuck a price tag on survival when their gross negligence robbed Dakota Weirs of her entire future. Now today, for my client to prove that Lush Fertilizer was negligent and that they chose profit over the lives of others, there are certain elements we must show by preponderance of evidence, meaning that based on the evidence, the following events are more likely than not. The first is that Lush Fertilizer used a product containing a chemical compound known as Drufo. Drufo is a key marketed ingredient in Lush's fertilizer, and it's not being contested by the defense today. The second is that the second burden we have proven is that Lush Fertilizer failed to exercise reasonable care to prevent a product from creating unreasonable risk of harm. And additionally, that Dakota is the consumer that could be reasonably expected to use this product. As you heard today in Dakota's testimony, she worked for Haven Landscaping for several years. And when asked if landscaping companies are the expected user of their products, Blake Doncourt, Chief Executive Officer at Lush, answered with yes. Now, fertilizers are primarily made up of chemicals. And yes, chemicals are dangerous. They can cause skin irritation and watery eyes. But irritated skin is leagues away from the life-ending damage caused by an ingredient completely unique to Lush, Drufo. And therefore, it does not warrant the same standard warning labels slapped on every fertilizer bottle. As you saw from Exhibit 1 today, the warning label begins with, as with any spray fertilizer. But Lush is not any spray fertilizer, not when they've stuffed it full of a carcinogenic product that makes their company stand out. Blake Doncourt, CEO of Lush, when asked if Lush ever had any concerns, replied no without any hesitation. And yet they conducted not one, but 2 in-house studies. And it's important to understand that the duration of their in-house studies was measured in weeks. Typical research of this kind lasts years. And additionally, Blake Doncourt, despite being the head of the company, could not even recall the length of their in-house studies conducted. That goes to show how important the safety of Drufo truly is to this company. Dr. Casey Rogers, a witness who testified today on Dakota's behalf, and not a paid employee of the very company that benefits from Drufo, said that you are 10 times more likely to contract non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after exposure to Drufo. The causal link between Drufo and cancer is more probable than not. If it wasn't, it wouldn't show in the research. And perhaps Lush wouldn't have buried their studies and fired a man who raised concerns about the safety of Drufo. Finally, we proved today that Dakota has damages caused specifically by Lush's negligence. As you heard from her testimony, she lost her passion, her scholarship, and her entire future. And additionally, because Dakota Weirs suffered such damages, and that these damages are a direct consequence of Lush Fertilizer's negligence, you're directed to determine if Dakota expressed any negligence as well. Let me answer this for you. She did not. She was 14 and acted in a way that any reasonable consumer with the minimal warning she received would have acted. She did not know she was going to get cancer. Lush Fertilizer, ladies and gentlemen, is simply afraid. They were afraid to let go of their 2% of profits it would have taken to bake Drufo and eliminate all possible carcinogens. They were afraid of their secret being leaked. And most of all now, they're afraid that their mistake of stealing this young girl's life is going to cost them their biggest moneymaker. For these reasons, we ask you to return a verdict in favor of the plaintiff and ask for damages in the amount of $10 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Macievich. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dakota Weirs played a game of Russian roulette. She took a risk with her life, her career, her passion. Dakota Weirs risked it all, and for what? The truth, ladies and gentlemen, as you've seen here today, is that Lush Fertilizer is safer and more environmentally friendly than any of its competitors. The truth is that Lush Fertilizer has always been committed to the safety of its consumers. And the truth is that the plaintiff gambled with her life when she disregarded countless warnings to wear protective clothing and face coverings during her time as a landscape technician. When the plaintiff developed an illness as a result of exposure to one of the many chemicals she worked with, she chose to single out only one, my client, Lush Fertilizer. Members of the jury, you have before you a set of jury instructions that serves to guide your decisions during deliberation. I'd like to direct your attention to instruction number 2. This instruction states that for the plaintiff to prevail on her negligence claim, she must prove all 4 of these elements by a preponderance of the evidence. This means the plaintiff must prove that each one is more likely true than not. The plaintiff has failed to meet this burden in 2 ways. First, the plaintiff has not proven that Lush Fertilizer caused her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Every witness in this case has testified that competing fertilizers contain known carcinogens. The plaintiff herself acknowledges that during her 4 years working as a landscape technician, she used several other fertilizers in addition to Lush's. The plaintiff has offered no evidence that it was Drufo in particular, rather than any of those other products that caused her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Given the number of other products the plaintiff used and the years over which she used them, there is simply no way of knowing which, if any, of these products caused her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The plaintiff has therefore failed to prove the causation element of her negligence claim, which by itself allows you to find Lush Fertilizer not liable. Second, even if the plaintiff had proven that it was in fact Drufo that caused her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, her negligence claim still does not hold any ground because she has not shown that Lush Fertilizer failed to exercise reasonable care in its manufacturing and distribution of Drufo. You heard from 3 witnesses from the defense, and each one told you the same thing. There was not and never has been any valid scientific evidence that Drufo is carcinogenic. To start, you heard from Blake Doncourt, Lush's CEO. He talked to you. I apologize. He talked to you about the extensive testing that his company's products undergo before they are introduced to the market. Mr. Doncourt told you that he had seen no valid evidence that Drufo was carcinogenic, and that if he ever had seen any such evidence, he never would have allowed Drufo to enter the market. Then you heard from Skylar Weirs, an independent journalist with the Rationalist magazine. She has never been paid by Lush Fertilizer, and she was not compensated by Lush to testify today. Ms. Weirs studied and wrote extensively on Lush Fertilizer as an investigative journalist and found no sort of causal link between Lush Fertilizer or Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or any other type of cancer. Finally, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who holds a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology and has led Lush Fertilizer's research and development team for the last 7 years. Dr. Williams and his team concluded that Drufo is not only non-carcinogenic, but also that it significantly reduces environmental risks and human health hazards because it does not need to be used nearly as often as competing fertilizers. In fact, the only witnesses who ever suggested that Drufo is carcinogenic have a clear bias to testify against my client. The plaintiff's paid expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, testifies that she stands to rack up a significant amount of money testifying in Drufo cases nationwide. In all of her conviction, however, the research Rogers swears by rests on a shaky foundation. It has not even been peer-reviewed, much less accepted by the scientific community. As for Carson Durst, she walked into this courtroom in search of something far more sinister. Ms. Durst has been seeking a way to retaliate at Blake Doncourt ever since she was fired from Lush Fertilizer. Ms. Durst claims to have been privy to a cover-up, but she has no evidence to support her claim. Most importantly, she admits that neither she nor Lush Fertilizer ever found any evidence that Drufo is carcinogenic to humans. As a result, the plaintiff has not met her burden of showing that Lush Fertilizer failed to exercise reasonable care. But ladies and gentlemen, even if you believe the plaintiff has met her burden, you must also consider whether the plaintiff bears any responsibility for her injuries. Instruction number 9 requires you to reduce the plaintiff's damages by whatever responsibility she bears for her injuries, up to 100%. How do we know the plaintiff bears responsibility? We can point to Exhibit 1. The Lush Fertilizer label reads, "As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended." The plaintiff herself told you that she did not use Lush Fertilizer as intended. She used it without goggles, without a mask, and without long sleeves and pants. She directly disobeyed the warnings by both her employer and the guidelines provided by their manufacturer. Given this, the defense requests that you find Lush Fertilizer not liable for negligence, or alternatively, to find the plaintiff comparatively at fault for her injuries. Do not reward Ms. Weirs for her game of Russian roulette. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That was awesome. I haven't done this electronically yet, so I'm not quite sure what our next step is.
So go ahead and scorers, fill out your score sheets and don't forget to hit submit. And then I will let you know when I have all of those in. My glasses on so I can.
I know that we're not supposed to give comments, but since we finished early, can I tell everyone how awesome they are? Everyone, and while they're filling out their score sheets, everyone, you were great. This was spectacular. Huge round of applause. You guys should all be so proud of yourselves. I want you to know, everybody, like, you made amazing objections. You did a beautiful job. A lot of times there were things that, if it were real court, I think a judge really would have sustained, that I just went ahead and overruled. I really wanted to give you guys a chance to show how well you can think on your feet. And so I tried my best to be like, well, if you were to ask this kind of question, and everybody picked up on those cues and just adapted beautifully. I was beyond impressed. But it wasn't because I thought you didn't know how to do it. It was because I wanted to give you a chance to show the scoring judges that you could think on your feet. And everybody did. So that was really great. You guys should be really proud of yourselves.
And I'm also going to take advantage to just say same thing. You guys did a wonderful job, very, very well prepared. Every year that I judged the high school tournament, I'm blown away by the fact that you guys are in high school. So keep up the great work. I hope that you continue to do this through college, maybe law schools in your future, and we get a bunch of bright minds to join the profession. So congratulations to each and every one of you. Truly, truly great work.
Keisha, you want to go or you want me to go? Okay. So thanks. So outstanding work to all of you. I have the privilege of seeing you guys from your last rounds. As you know, I ran the tournament for Adams and Broomfield. I echo a lot of what Robin and Brett were saying, but I just want to take a moment to go back to the beginning in the plaintiff's case when Dakota Weirs was testifying, because the stars aligned in just the most phenomenal way that I have ever seen. The person who played Dakota, outstanding job. Cross-examination, amazing. And I know, Evelyn, I know you were a little nervous after your opening. The impeachment that you were doing on that was high-level practice. There is a tendency for individuals to ask one question too many. You start laying down the impeachment materials and then you ask something and all of a sudden you get screwed up with the witness on it. And you just had it so perfectly. You dug this hole for Dakota and then just walked away from it. And that's the sort of thing that's incredibly impactful in trial. Ashley, outstanding. You have this conversational tone that is just very natural. You were holding your pen and it was just, that's what you see when attorneys are at the podium, just telling their story to a jury. That moment from this round was just far and away the best that I have ever seen in mock trial out of every round that I've ever watched and every year that I've planned it. So, congratulations on all of that. When you're doing your openings and closings, I would encourage you guys to make sure that your themes stand out a little bit. You're telling a very compelling emotional story here. And so, really resonate that through with a solid hook in the beginning and then bring it back to you in your closing. One thing to remember from some examinations, you refresh your friends and you impeach your enemies. So if you are cross-examining a witness, you don't need to refresh their memory. Get them caught in a lie and then impeach them, confront them with what they just wiggled on. So that's really the only comments that I have for you. Outstanding work. And again, that Dakota Weirs moment was the best, hands down. So congratulations, all of you.
Yeah, awesome. I have to echo everyone's comments. This was the culmination of a great weekend. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Susan, have you hit submit yet on your sheet?
Oh, no, I don't think I have. sorry.
You're good.
I need to get there. I will do that in like a second.
Perfect.
As long as we're giving attorney shout outs,
crap.
Jasmine and Shannon, you were
Where do I
both
get-
so poised. It was really beautiful to see. Neither of you got flustered at all. And Andrew, you think so quickly on your feet. You whatever got on your, I kind of started just seeing what I could throw at you to see what you would do. And you were able to bob and weave so quickly, and that was amazing. And all the witnesses were so well prepared. So
I'm having trouble finding the score sheet here.
I also, Ms. Willian, I meant to tell you that moment when I was like there was a moment on your cross-examination when I think you were like, oh, I really want to keep asking these questions. You had already gotten him to look like he was just so biased. Like you had already totally won your point. And I was like, I'm just going to tell her to go move on. Like she already won this. So that's what that was.
Holy.
Oh. I think we lost Susan again here. I will catch up with her so that you guys have time to like go grab a snack or something before awards. But thank you all. You guys were fantastic. Thank you to my volunteers. I love you, love you, love you. There's no way we could do this without you. All right, guys, we will see you at awards here shortly.
Thank you, guys. You were all awesome for competing against.
Have a good one, y'all.
Everybody.
Good job, Robin.
Thanks, guys.
That was awesome. Thank you.
I haven't been in a courtroom in a while. That felt fun.
It is not easy to do the presiding for the mock trial. Like
We had a judge get kicked out and like one of the scoring panelists stepped up. I would literally throw up. Like there is no way. And I've been doing this for 10, 15 years. Nope.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? At the end of the day, everything I do is going to be wrong, and that's okay. 'Cause I just want to let them talk. And that was fun. Anyway, that was really fun. Thank you for coordinating this.
Thank you.
Hey, Amy, who won?
I don't know. I haven't even looked. I'll
And was
shoot you
that
an email.
Holy
Look
Family
at
or
it.
Stargate?
Now I have to find the score sheet, which seems to have disappeared.
If you can't find it, it's really, we had an extra scorer in this particular room. So if you
I really
okay
like to do it. I just can't figure out how to get there.
I'll shoot you an email, Josh.
That's good.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was talking to Josh.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. See ya. Damn. I thought these kids were pretty damn good.
They were good. I had not
Better
seen
than
those two
I
yet.
have to say they were better than yesterday.
Oh, really? Did you see some of
And
them?
theoretically they should be, shouldn't they? Because this is kind of an elimination thing, isn't it?
Right.
Okay, so how do I get back to the frickin' score sheet?
Do you have it in a tab somewhere along the top?
I don't know. I don't see it. I don't.
It should be like
That
a
doesn't
yeah,
do it.
like a orange star with a C in the middle is the little icon.
Let's see what this is. Courtroom one. Maybe this is it. What does that word say? Round 4, courtroom 1. So damn small. And it's truly annoying. Our courtroom 1. Copy link. That's not a link.
I don't know. I can't.